Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 30th of May, 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. Joining me in the studio today, we've got Patrick Henningsen. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
Great to be with you, Mike.
And by video link, we have Mark Anderson. Now, later in the programme, Patrick's going to be covering Gaza and the Trump crackdown on visas against anyone criticising Israel. Mark, for his part, is going to be reporting on a documentary about vaccine injured called Silenced and RFK's announcement on COVID jabs. We're going to begin today with the Killweb. Now, the UK Secretary of State for War here, John Healey, has announced the Killweb. Well, what do we think about that? It's part of the Strategic Defence Review 2025, which is about to be launched in a couple of weeks' time, having already been announced by Starmer in July last year. And he said that was to consider the threats Britain faces, the capabilities needed to meet them, the state of the UK armed forces and the resources available. But this defence review is different. These are normally run by the government, but this time it's being led by Lord Robertson. And while he was once a Labour Defence Secretary, he was also once Secretary General for NATO. And so he's considered, although Labour, an outsider nonetheless, and perhaps perfectly aligned with the NATO agenda, Patrick. But look, the Killweb is going to cost the British taxpayer £1 billion. They don't call it a Killweb, of course, at least the British government doesn't. They use the softer sounding digital targeting web. That's the term they use, and they say it will enable quick fire targeting of enemy assets, including through offensive cyber operations. Now, the Killweb is going to be based at a new cyber and electromagnetic command, which they are establishing at the same time. And this is going to lead defensive cyber operations and coordinate offensive cyber operations with the National Cyber Force. So we are going to war in that sense, without doubt. Healey says that ways of warfare are rapidly changing, with the UK facing daily cyber attacks on this new front line. And according to the Ministry of Defence, more than 90,000 sub-threshold attacks were recorded in the last 2 years. No evidence for this statistic was provided, naturally. Healey described Britain as a country under attack, increasing attacks, and this is the nerve centre of the UK's military that helps us defend against these attacks. The keyboard has become a weapon of war. Let's just put that on screen. So ways of warfare are rapidly changing, with the UK facing daily cyber attacks, as I say, but the keyboard has become the weapon of war. That's great news, isn't it? The cyber command will be, or this new group will be headed by General Sir James Hockenhull, who succeeded General Sir Patrick Sanders as the commander of UK Strategic Command in May 2022. And he also serves as aide-de-camp general to the monarch, so currently King Charles, but previously Queen Elizabeth as well. He's been doing that since 2022. So the question is, what is a Killweb? Well, the idea originated with DARPA, and Admiral William Owens wrote a paper about a system of systems. He was talking about integrating command and control, the intelligence from sensors, and weapons together, and he was talking about this in the mid-1990s. But by 1998, Vice Admiral Arthur Jabrowski took the next step and wrote a paper that explained how to link systems together, and he invented the term network-centric warfare. Then in March, we'll come forward to March 2023 here with this report. This is the US Naval Institute publishing an article with the headline, Enter the Killweb, a concept for drone warfare. And they say that the potential applications of loitering munitions, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and semi-autonomy in a battlefield setting are extensive. Now, if you don't know what loitering munitions are, another term for that is kamikaze drones. So this article goes on to explain that kamikaze drones are launched with an explosive payload. They circle the battlefield, they identify a target, and then they fly into that target and detonate on impact. In the future, command and control of these types of weapons, which is typically managed by a soldier on the ground, is going to expand to medium or high altitude, long endurance drones as well. So what we're seeing here is a destination and that destination is autonomous AI-controlled weapon systems, as Laura Nolan is pointing out in this article that she on her blog on Medium. Patrick, this is extremely dangerous. Once we start seeing either remotely controlled or autonomous drone swarms, anybody's a target, and these are very hard to deal with.
Very hard to defend. An AI-driven autonomous swarm of drones, Mike, can be deployed to, let's say, decapitate a government, surround government buildings, kill presidents and prime ministers. We already have our governments involved in a lot of these activities anyway by other means. So this just gives them another tool for disruption, hit-and-run attacks, assassinations, or what they call decapitation strikes. Now, what's the response going to be from another power? This seems to me, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, this is all predicated towards state actors, right?
Yes.
So this is targeting Russia, basically. So is this the policy? Because below the military rhetoric, there is political beliefs and political policies. So is the policy permanent war? We must destroy Russia. We must have regime change in Russia. We must break up Russia into 10 different countries. Are we married to that policy? Because I don't know anybody that actually voted on that. And I don't know anybody that I've met that wants that. They don't want to be in a constant state of war. But who wants to be in a constant state of war?
Well, the deep state wants to be in a constant state of war.
And the companies
involved in producing these products.
These products.
The AI companies want to be, certainly.
So imagine what we could do together between Britain, Europe, Russia, China for humanity. There's no limit to the potential. But imagine what would happen if these types of plans are allowed to continue going forward. They're going to end in tears, because rather than be subject to this type of loitering and decapitation strikes, what's a country like Russia bound to do? Maybe they should spend as much money on defending against Oreshnik missiles, because that's where they're pushing things to an all-out confrontation between nuclear powers. This is no joke.
No, indeed, and there is no defense for Oreshnik missiles at this point, and they can be armed with tactical nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons.
So it'd be one thing, Mike, and I don't want to belabor this point. It'd be one thing to have this conversation, look at this development while there's diplomacy going on parallel tracks, just to put us, the public, at ease. But there's no diplomacy. There's only talk of more war.
Right. Extremely dangerous. Well, look, let's move on to Gaza. And Patrick, the atrocities there just seem to get worse as the starvation begins to really bite.
Yeah, we're going to show you a video clip. I mean, there's just so much shocking material. We are only, showing you a very small sample of this. But go ahead and watch the scene right now in Gaza. So for people who don't know what happened there, so Israel basically struck people who were put into place, Palestinians, it looks like, probably from the World Food Program or UNRWA or something, who were guarding the aid so that it could be distributed. They killed them, basically. Now you have mercenaries firing on the crowds, the IDF firing on hungry crowds. That's what's going on. They're shooting. People are dying. Let's bring this up on screen here. This is the story. U.S.-Israeli Gaza humanitarian scam. I can't think of a better word to call this, because that's exactly what it is. And we're going to lay out to you how exactly this scam has unfolded. And this is the company here, or the foundation, the charity, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. We're going to dig into that organization and take a look at it. But funny enough, the CEO of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation resigned just a few days ago, the head of this controversial organization here. Basically, this is a quote from Jake Wood, the former CEO of the foundation, could not adhere to the humanitarian principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence, which I will not abandon.
Well, we got a bit of integrity here, do we?
Well, this is a former Special Forces, U.S. for Special Forces. I believe he was a sniper in Special Forces. So, he seems like he wants to do the right thing. Even it comes from the military side. I think, when some people like this are jumping jumping ship, Mike. It's not a good sign. And so we'll go on and take a look at this organization here. This is the organization. And, you know, it all looks good on the surface, doesn't it? But let's take a look at who's involved. Look at this. On the board, leadership and governance, Nate Mook, former CEO of the World Central Kitchen. Now, that's a familiar name, isn't it? You remember that pier that the U.S. military built?
The one that floated away in the storm, you mean?
That one,
Yeah.
the one that cost $500 million. Yeah, he was a CEO of World Central Kitchen that was using that to deliver these ready-made meals that people in Palestine don't actually need ready-made meals. They actually have aid and they have kitchens set up with UNRWA. We'll show that in a moment there. And there's a few other characters in there that are interesting. We'll take a look at who exactly they are. And let's take a look at the organization here. And so here is Nate Mook. So this guy is an operative that just bounces from one bad show to another. So he's in charge of this, chairman of the board. Jake Wood, looks like has some integrity, has resigned. Probably the right thing to do. John Burke, former COO, he's gone. So who's taking over? There's the interim CEO, Mike. It is John Ackrey, former senior manager at USAID, a notorious CIA front. So again, adding to the spooks there. And then you've got David Papazian there. And this is the founder. Now, this is controversial in Switzerland. The Swiss authorities are now basically exerting oversight over Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is founded and listed in Switzerland. They've now come into legal trouble there. This whole thing is falling apart. Let's take a look at that as well. Now, this is the security company attached to this, Safe Reach Solutions. There's Philip Riley. What's his background? Well, let's take a look. Oh, career CIA. Okay, so more spooks. Is this looking suspicious to you? It certainly is to me, Mike. And so we'll go on here. We've got a video we're going to show you. Now, this is pretty shocking. So people are basically trying to get around to the barricades where they have the food stored, and these mercenaries and Israeli soldiers inside are doing incredible things like chucking grenades into the crowd. Watch this.
هيو كمان هيو كمان الله يفضل عرضكم عرض الكونات عرض الامل.
So were those stun grenades? Because you know, obviously people weren't being killed directly by the grenades, but the natural reaction for people is going to stampede, right?
Yeah. And so those are stun grenades. Those are the type of things you remember reported on the yellow vests in France that were taking off hands and people losing eyes. Those are grenades. So they're just throwing them into the crowd. These are people that have been intentionally starved by the Israelis, by the Americans. They're begging for food. Some people haven't eaten in days or had a substantial meal in months. And these people are basically throwing grenades at the hungry people. Insane. But this is the whole scam of the Gaza humanitarian relief operation here. Now, this is a great report, and I'm going to point people to this here. Biometrics for food, a dangerous shift from humanitarian relief to coercive surveillance. Now, this is the safe and secure solutions that we showed you, run by the spook, Mr. Riley. And this is the report, is a damning report by Skyline International Human Rights. The use of biometric surveillance as a condition for receiving food and humanitarian aid is a blatant violation of the Palestinians' right to privacy, fundamental human rights guaranteed under international law. Why are the Israelis doing this? Why are the Americans doing this? They say it's to prevent Hamas from getting food. So again, using the Hamas card to impose what is clearly quite an incredible system of data gathering and so forth here. And they go on, just finally, rather than alleviating the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, this plan institutionalizes surveillance and control over aid access, using rations as a means of enforcing compliance, hurting people. We'll show you where they're hurting them too, because it's a very interesting story indeed. But this is the whole point, Mike. This is what this whole thing is about. We'll bring this up on screen. This is UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. Now, this has been providing aid in Gaza since the mid-1950s to refugees, people displaced from the Nakba, people in occupied territories. They have 400 mini kitchens. They have a network of suppliers. The aid was flowing before October 7th, 400 trucks a day, Mike. So they had enough to look after people, medical supplies. They even provide counseling, education they're providing for the kids. All of that stuff was taken care of. Israel destroyed it by accusing UNRWA of harboring Hamas. You remember that story? So the United States got on board with that fraud, Joe Biden, and they've now destroyed UNRWA. They've killed a lot of their staff. Israel has targeted UNRWA facilities, UN refugee facilities, in their bombing. And here's an UNRWA facility right now. Look at it. Just completely turned to rubble. That's what this is all about. Israel and the U.S. are trying to replace UNRWA with their own aid delivery, which is designed to do something very specific. Now, take a look at this scene from a World Food Program central warehouse in central Gaza. Watch this riot that ensued here. 2 people were killed, 60 plus people injured. And I believe there was firing on the crowd. Go ahead and watch this.
ياجوج وماجوج ياجوج وماجوج ماتوا من الجوع حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ياجوج وماجوج حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل على كان السبب حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل استحام من البرق فضوه كله ما ضلش حاجه.
So the U.S. government directly responsible for this, the U.K. government, Germany, France, the European Union, and of course Israel has been dragging their feet to create this very situation. What is the end game, though? And we continue to ask ourselves that question. Let's take a look at this. Bring this up on screen. Here's the end game. Take a look at this map. You see the red dots there. There's 1 in the middle and 3 at the bottom. Okay, these are the so-called distribution facilities through this Gaza Humanitarian Front organization. That's an intelligence front. And by the way, the Israeli parliamentarians, Avigdor Lieberman himself said he was upset Mossad was funding this operation. He let the cat out of the bag. So this is the CIA and Mossad. Now, what are they trying to do? They're literally trying to bait people. Take a closer look at this. Take a closer look at this. This is what it's about. Kill zones, concentration camps, and ethnic cleansing. That's exactly what this plan is. Take a closer look, though. Okay, pay attention. This is the point. Pushing people south from the north down to the bottom section. And what happens to them at that point? They get bombed and pushed into the Sinai Desert, whoever's still alive. This is the Israeli objective. This has been articulated by Israeli ministers over the last couple of months. This is not a secret. So we're done guessing about what the situation is. You're watching the operation live. We're showing you how it's done. Just bring that back up on screen so people can see. Okay, that's it. That's what's happening, folks. There's no doubt about it. You've seen the pictures. You've seen the whole 90% of the housing has been obliterated. The hospitals are gone. They're trying to make it unlivable to do the final solution. Israel's final solution, Netanyahu's final solution, Donald Trump's final solution, because Trump is absolutely on board with this. Now, who's the chief envoy for Donald Trump? It's Steve Witkoff, right? So we'll take that graphic away for a moment. But Steve Witkoff is the chief envoy. Who does Steve Witkoff work for? Steve Witkoff does not work for the American people. He does not work for the U.S. government. He doesn't have an official position with the U.S. government. He was not confirmed by Congress or Senate. He works for the Israelis. Steve Witkoff works for the Israelis. Look at the results. Look at what's happened since Trump has come in and put this person, Steve Witkoff, a billionaire from New York, very close to the Israeli lobby. he is working for the Israelis to help them achieve their objectives, to help them towards the final solution, which we showed you in the map just previously. And here, for any other further questions, if you want to see how really dark this is getting, take a look at this. This is from the Palestine Chronicle. ISIS, CIA, and the GHF, Israel's new frontier of control through hunger. And what are the Israelis doing? If you thought it couldn't get any worse, the plot again thickens. Israel's now backing ISIS-linked criminals, drug lords, pilfering aid and food, in some cases dumping food out in the Negev desert, and murderers they've been working alongside in southern Gaza in the so-called buffer zone after their invasion of the area in 2024. This is documented. That's where we're at. And this is intentional, this policy. It's to disrupt and to create all kinds of chaos and ultimately shortage and make it so Israel and the U.S. have to control all the aid.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this is. For anybody who hasn't worked this out yet, I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Let's move on then. And let's say if you would like to support the UK column, the place to go is support.ukcolumn.org. You can make a donation. You can join us as a member. And if you do join us as a member, that gives you access to UK Column News Extra and so on. Please do pick something up at the shop if you'd like to. And if you buy something from clivedecarl.com using this link, we do get a small commission for that. If you can't do anything of that, then please at least do share the material you see on the UK Column website. That helps us get around the censorship regime. Now, tonight at 7 p.m., Jerm is speaking to me and to Charles. So this is the latest in our banter program. So a bit of a roundup of the week and so on, some other topics to discuss there. Join us at 7 p.m. for that. And also the supporting vaccine injured New Zealanders with Linda Wharton interview that was done, that went out at 1 p.m. yesterday. That is now up as an on-demand version on the UK Column website. If you didn't see it live yesterday, please watch it and share it. And staying with vaccine injuries, Mark, let's welcome you to the program. Tell us what has been described by the filmmakers as the hidden story of the human cost of censorship.
Good day, gentlemen, and UK Column viewers. Yeah, good news here, although there's somber elements to it, of course, but very good news in that there's a new documentary out called Follow the Silenced. And here is the basic cover of it, the movie poster, you might say. It already won a Santa Monica International Film Festival award. The woman there with her mouth covered with the word silenced is mentioned in an article I recently did for UK Column. I'll make that note. And so all in all, this is a very positive development. There's a little bit of information that goes with it, of course, from a press release. I'm citing that slightly here. After winning the Best of Festival and Best Director at the 2025 Santa Monica International Film Festival, this powerful film is ready to debut on the global stage. It reveals the heartbreaking journey that many of us have heard of course. In this case, focusing on Americans who trusted the science only to have their lives forever changed when they were chosen to be in the first COVID vaccine trial. So it focuses on those that were guinea pigs in the trials. But they refused to be silenced. And the documentary follows those who were smeared, slandered, and, as they say, pushed into the shadows. When Big Pharma and the government wouldn't cover for them or wouldn't help them, they found strength in each other. And I watched about 9/10 of it. It's a very emotional and yet information-packed presentation, guys. And here it shows that it's based on 3,600 peer-reviewed publications on COVID vaccine adverse events. So there's a lot of data behind it, they're saying. So it's not just an emotional outpouring. They've gathered a lot of information for it, evidently. They've done a lot of research and so on and so forth. And this is the article I did not long ago that appears on UK Column. And of course, it focuses on not just vaccines, but going beyond vax dangers and looking at other big pharma products that are generating endless lawsuits, alleged to have caused cancer and a number of things. And in that article, I mentioned Breanne Dressen, who co-chairs a group called React 19. It's an interest group for people saying they've been injured by the COVID-19 jabs. She sued AstraZeneca over medical expenses and much more, arguing that she's still disabled, unable to work, unable to carry on with her life. And I had mentioned her in the article at UK Column, and it turns out that she's the main protagonist in Follow the Silence in this documentary. So her life is featured a lot in this. And I don't know if we'll see her in this clip, but we do have a small clip from Follow the Silence to give you a flavor of it. So let's check that out.
I did my part. I got it. I got mine because I wanted to protect myself and my family. I can no longer cook, clean, or even pick up and hold my baby for too long before my body begins to shake uncontrollably. I have been called a liar and a fake, and have even been told by the ER doctors that this is all in my head.
Drug companies have spent $4.5 billion on lobbying and campaign contributions.
In today's world, Big Pharma decides whether you live or die, and that makes them dangerously powerful.
Mr. Chairman, it is a sad fact that we regulate industries such as machinery and automobiles far better than we do those that affect what may be placed in our bodies.
Pfizer received the biggest criminal fine in US history for mispromoting medicines and for paying kickbacks to compliant doctors.
They're getting paid by the pharmaceutical industry, by the very companies that they're supposed to oversee and to protect us from.
That captures the flavor of the documentary quite well, and it harkens back to some other reports I've made, gentlemen, about Pfizer, for example, being mired in lawsuits going back to 2009 and before, and being the where verdicts decided and concluded that Pfizer had committed some of the most egregious acts in Department of Justice history. The largest payouts by Pfizer, they were the largest in Department of Justice history in terms of the court decisions and what Pfizer had to pay in fines and things like that. Now, another piece of the puzzle, or another part of the story here, is that Texans for Vaccine Choice went to a recent U.S. Senate May 21 hearing, a committee hearing, and it was attended by the president of that group, Rebecca Hardy. And the hearing was hosted by one of America's most outspoken critics of the U.S. COVID response, Senator Ron Johnson, the Wisconsin senator, who's also calling for a renewed probe into 9/11. And there were other important witnesses there at that hearing, including Dr. Peter McCullough. We're familiar with that Texas-based cardiologist, Dr. Jordan Vaughn, Dr. James Thorpe, and an attorney, Aaron Siri, all of whom delivered data-driven testimonies to that Senate committee. And from there, this is the hearing that Rebecca attended. It was called The Corruption of Science and Federal Health Agencies, How Health Officials Downplayed and Hid Myocarditis and Other Adverse Events Associated with the COVID-19 Vaccines. And that was the Homeland Security Government Affairs Committee that Rebecca attended. Another part of the good news of this is the hearing was followed by a congressional screening of this documentary, Follow the Silence, which is about an hour and 10 minutes long in total. And the film reportedly received a standing ovation from that committee room filled with high-level executive, congressional, and senatorial staffers. And I did get a quote back from Rebecca Hardy. I contacted her, and I believe we have that quote we can show. I'm not sure.
Not just here, Mark, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I contacted Rebecca Hardy, and she came back and said that things went very well with that, and she was pleased to attend that, and things are looking very good. She thinks there's a real change in the direction with the powers of big pharma that we're seeing a much brighter future right now. At any rate, that's sufficient for now. I'll have more related stuff later about RFK and some of his changes.
Thank you for that, Mike. Now, Patrick, you've been reporting on the Trump crackdown on freedom of speech around criticism of Israel or protest for Gaza on behalf of Gaza. It looks like things are beginning to ramp up even further.
They are. And the first thing we're going to point to is somewhat encouraging on the free speech front. That is, if you support free speech and the First Amendment, and not everybody does in America, certainly not the Trump administration or Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. But this is a legal breakthrough here. A federal judge has said that the law used to detain Mahmoud Khalil, this is the Columbia graduate student who is being deported by the U.S. government, it's likely unconstitutional. So this is very interesting. So it does look, there's two court cases with this particular person. And here it is, the so-called foreign policy law. This is what they've invoked in the U.S., saying that Mahmoud Khalil as a student was a danger to U.S. national security or foreign policy because he was criticizing Israel or opposing a genocide. They're saying that the law is unconstitutionally as applied to Mr. Khalil, who acted solely within the United States. So this argument that somehow it's affecting the U.S. internationally or whatever, it's just not standing up to reality. The judge further said that Marco Rubio has failed to affirmatively determine that Khalil's actions had affected U.S. relations. So this is unprecedented. So I think this is encouraging. This is he's very likely to win on constitutional grounds, exactly as we said when the story broke. But there you are. So I hate to be right about that, but nonetheless. So let's bring up this development here. So Marco Rubio is on a tear. You notice he's not doing much internationally, Mike. He's really just chasing students and Chinese students. That's Marco Rubio's main remit. So the State Department is now halting interviews with students and exchange visas. So the war against Harvard University, which is over speech against Israel, the U.S. is saying that Harvard shouldn't be allowed to have international students, which is obscene if you think about it. So he's basically saying, and they get real specific here, we use all available information in our visa and screening and vetting, says State Department here in a statement without specifying what could flag an applicant for rejection under the new, quote, social media policy. They're checking your social media. The statement noted that visa applicants have been asked to provide social media account information since 2019. So if you want to apply as an international student, and this could be extended to tourists, by the way, using probably AI systems provided by Israel, of course. So if you have anything negative about Israel, you can say what you want about the United States. You can say, oh, America's the worst country in the world. Donald Trump's a demon, the great Satan. That's no problem there. But say anything bad about Israel, and you will no pass go. You will be rejected from entry. So it gets even stranger. Look at this. Rubio's order comes under President Trump, is trying to coerce Harvard University and other institutions to restrict what can be said on campuses, particularly with regards to anti-Israel speech. So it's kind of obvious where this policy is coming from, but this is where, Mike, this is where things are really headed. Take a look at this. The U.S. will aggressively revoke visas of Chinese students, says Marco Rubio. What's the basis for this? Like, how are they going to pick and choose which Chinese students are good or bad? Well, here it is. The Trump administration will work to aggressively revoke visas of Chinese students, including those with, quote, ties to the Chinese Communist Party, or who are studying in, quote, critical fields. So if a Chinese person is studying in STEMs, engineering, technology, and if maybe they have somebody in their family who might be tied to the Chinese Communist Party, they're not allowed to come and study in the U.S. Now, we were talking about this before the show, Mike, and, Chinese students provide 20% of all U.S. foreign students internationally. They provide probably a huge chunk of financial aid and help to all universities in America. That's just a reality. And it's really been like that for 30 years. So they want to shut this down. That's the sort of thing you do before you declare war against a country. But you were saying, Mike, that it's not easy to get top university places in China.
Absolutely. It's extremely competitive. And that's why there's such a diaspora of people coming to foreign countries, Britain and the United States in particular, for education. I'm sure we're going to talk about this much more in Extra.
And I'll add, in Silicon Valley, a lot of the startups are basically founded by young Chinese. San Francisco has the biggest, and California is the biggest Chinese population outside of China in the world. And it has been like that for the whole duration of the existence of that state. So they obviously family connections, people coming over. They've done a massive amount of innovation and brain power into our big tech industry.
Yeah.
And they want to shut it down.
Yeah.
So there you are.
Okay. Well, look, let's come back onto the topic of COVID jabs. And Mark, RFK Jr. has made an announcement with respect to children. What has he said?
Well, it's interesting. As we know, he had a less than stellar confirmation hearing. He made a couple points worthy of remembering, noteworthy things. But it seemed at the time, as Patrick pointed out, that he was largely bowing to the pressure of the deep state he was about to enter. And there looked to be a lot of compromise. The good news is that he is laying down some planks of good policy, evidently. And so one of the things is that he says no COVID vaccines for healthy children and pregnant women. On the 27th of May, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., of course, made another sweeping change to the U.S. vaccine landscape. I'm citing different sources, including from the University of Minnesota. And Kennedy said the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have removed its recommendation to give the COVID-19 vaccine for healthy children and pregnant women. And an exact quote is, "I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule." That's what RFK Jr. said, flanked by Martin McCary, who's with the FDA, and other officials, another one who's a director of the National Institutes of Health. One thing I would note that's interesting is it says the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women. And one would wonder from hearing that, if you're not altogether healthy as a child or you're not altogether healthy as a pregnant woman, arguably you might be more vulnerable to vaccine adverse effects. So what's with the language there? Probably we'll find out in the days and weeks ahead. But here's the official announcement from HHS.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary, and I'm here today with NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty McCary. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science.
There's no evidence healthy kids need it today, and most countries have stopped recommending it for children.
We're now one step closer to realizing President Trump's promise to make America healthy again.
So on the surface, at least, to a degree, that's good news. And probably they'll go further with this. So we're going to wait and see on some of those qualifying words, healthy children, healthy pregnant women. But I also got a response from Rebecca Hardy on this particular item. And when I contacted her, and she said the following, she's with, of course, Texans for Vaccine Choice. She's the president. And this was directly to UK Column. This wasn't a blanket statement. "We welcome the announcement the CDC is reevaluating its recommendation of the COVID-19 vaccine for healthy children and pregnant women, given the growing number of reported injuries and adverse reactions associated with these vaccines. This is," she said, "a much needed step toward prioritizing safety, enhancing transparency, and restoring trust in public health." A much needed step. And I think we sense that other steps may be needed. But that's the way it stands as of today, gentlemen.
Mike, just a quick comment. I mean, Mark really nailed it there on the healthy qualification, because why was that language inserted in there? And always with RFK, there's always some kind of fly in the ointment. It's just common sense. If your child's healthy, of course, you're not going to strap them down for an experimental gene jab, okay? Common sense, obviously. So there's nothing really, I think, valuable or novel here other than, the government's not going to lean on you, basically. But if you are healthy, if a pregnant woman is healthy, does that mean they need to get the COVID vaccine? The fact that this is not being explained, that RFK injected, no pun intended, that in there, is extremely worrying. And I'm wondering where's the wizard behind the curtain on this? Because it seems like a puppet show with the three stooges there.
Yes, but you've got some vaccine news as well here, Patrick, with respect to Moderna.
Yeah, some potentially good news here. And again, we'll bring in RFK. U.S. cancels more than $700 million in funding for Moderna to develop the bird flu vaccine. So Biden chucked in $590 million, and they had another $176 million with Trump here. And so the bird flu vaccine is basically for Moderna has been canceled. Huge shareholder uproar at Moderna. They don't know what to do. They need to find some free cash. And of course, the bird population is very upset because they have been demonized for carrying this virus that nobody can basically find under a microscope, but only in cell culture and all sorts of complicated processes. To claim that something's happening that might be or might not be contagious, that is not deadly for humans, that doesn't even make humans sick. But nonetheless, if there's one or two cases that they claim are around, it's enough to vaccinate the world. And of course, again, the birds are being unfairly demonized. All the chickens, the roosters who are laying eggs for us, they're all in jeopardy because of this diabolical plot, it seems.
Yeah, but okay, we're not at risk from bird flu, but are we at risk from yet another COVID variant?
Ooh, well, big announcement today, folks, and we didn't tell you this at the beginning of the program because we didn't want to
spoil the surprise.
We don't want to spoil the surprise or scare anybody, quite frankly. But lo and behold, Mike, a new COVID variant has been launched. A new COVID variant is here, and it's more transmissible. Here are the signs and symptoms. Big press event here, and you know what that means, folks? That means Corona wants back onto the main stage. So again, the special thing about the NB.1.8.1 is that they think it's possible it comes from China. It comes from China. So this is particularly dangerous, especially because they claim it comes from China. How did they claim this? How did they find? They did what's called biosurveillance through sequencing. So sequencing and PCR tests, they've got this idea that they put the data together, and it's a new variant's on the loose. This is an extremely disturbing announcement, and we are just so shocked, and I hope everybody is not scared. It's okay to go out, obviously, and socialize with your friends and family, and just go ahead with your daily lives. Act like nothing is happening, but be careful and stay safe out there.
Well, look, in Extra, I'm going to be talking about mentioning the fact that I was in the United States over the weekend, and actually, there were quite a number of people wearing masks again.
Oh no, that's never stopped.
Right.
On the subways in New York and Boston, particularly bad. Philadelphia. East Coast, basically, so from Washington, D.C. The further you get up the eastern seaboard, the more masks on public transport. So there's just a lot of people that are still traumatized, and they've learned to love the mask, much like, was it Aldous Huxley's brother? Right. In that famous interview. They learned to love their servitude. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Right. Well, look, at the top of the program, we were talking about the Killweb. We were talking about the potential of AI drone swarms and so on. The UK government is absolutely doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on AI in so many policy areas at the moment. So let's talk a little bit more about that. And we're kicking off with defence yet again, because the largest ever UK defence AI trial has been conducted. These are their words, and many of their words here, across land, sea and air, building on previous trials known as Wintermute. Don't know where they get that name from. This trial involved around 200 scientists from the Defence Science Technology Laboratory, military personnel from the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force, industry representatives and international partners collaborating at Portland Harbour to develop what they describe as critical AI systems for automatic target detection and recognition. So this took place over a 5-day period using all kinds of technology, and data was recorded from Royal Naval vessels, ground vehicles, manned and unmanned aircraft, and they were operating what is described as mission-based scenarios. It also included participation from Australia and from New Zealand, from Australia and from the United States. So this was done within the AUKUS framework. The Ministry of Defence claims that the AI technologies under development, you'll be glad to know they're not intended to replace human decision-making, but rather to support it. The systems will, quote, reduce cognitive burdens burden on military personnel by filtering information and providing clearer battlefield intelligence, ensuring more timely and effective responses in dynamic situations. So, but it doesn't end there.
So it can kill faster,
Yes,
basically.
absolutely.
Very good. Yeah.
The Foreign Office is also using AI, and this time it's to detect hostile state activity. And the hostile state they're referring to is Russia. And the theater of operations is the Arctic. So here's David Lammy in the Arctic a couple of days ago.
That's a hostile actor right there.
Indeed it is. Lammy said, "It's more important than ever that we work with our allies in the high north like Norway and Iceland to enhance our ability to patrol and protect these waters. That's why we have today announced new UK funding to work more closely with Iceland and using AI to bolster our ability to monitor and detect hostile state activity in the Arctic." Now, the FCDO didn't go into any more detail about what they're specifically doing with AI as of yet. But in the meantime, the Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillipson, gave a speech at the recent Education World Forum 2025, in which she was drawing attention to the Open Innovation Team and their efforts to bring more AI into schools. And she said, working with the Open Innovation Team, we'll be engaging the sector to understand what works. We'll look at how tools, including AI, can improve things like staff workload, pupil outcomes, and inclusivity. So, yes, okay, we won't even comment on that. Evidence must be at the heart of all we do, and EdTech, at EdTech and right across education. Now, the Open Innovation Team is a cross-government unit that sits in the Cabinet Office. It's all about fusion because they're working to bring policy from vested interests outside government right into the heart of government. And they say they've worked already with 2,500 experts from 930 organizations to help craft their policy work. And yet another AI-related announcement, the government has also announced that the Border Force wants to expand its use of artificial intelligence to help with searching and screening of freight at all UK seaports by automating anomaly detection. They're saying that this automation is going to speed up screening times. It's also going to increase the volume of goods processed, and it will free up officers to focus on critical tasks. It's going to reduce false alarms, and it's going to minimize unnecessary secondary inspections. So there we go. They're using the accelerated capability environment that we've talked about before on this program to support all this. Well, what more can we say?
If only they could make international trade more quicker and efficient and less bureaucratically burdensome. Well, be great for the economy, wouldn't it?
Well, the best way that you can do that is to imposing tariffs, which stop the trade altogether. That would, because obviously, if you reduce the amount of trade going through the ports, then you're reducing the workload on the border force. So we've got to applaud Trump's tariffs in this regard.
Yeah, and the balls up of Brexit, but we won't go there. It's legion.
It absolutely is. Now, Nigel Farage has been speaking recently about the efforts, if he were to become Prime Minister, he would be pushing forward with efforts to cut wasteful spending in the British government and so on. He's basically echoing everything that Elon Musk has been saying for the last few months. How's that going, Patrick?
Yeah, that would be great. Let's do what Elon Musk did with the Trump administration. Not going so well, actually. Let's take a look at this report here. This is an article. This is a devastating article, by the way, written by somebody on the right, just so people know. But Musk is fleeing the Trump administration after DOGE failure, white genocide hoax, and X meltdown. X melted down as a platform the last 2 weeks, totally dysfunctional. People were just losing their DMs and timelines. But the big thing here is DOGE. So let's take a look at this. So that was the battle cry, right? We're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, said Elon Musk. And he made some big claims and big promises and pledges at the beginning of this. So let's take a look at where things actually ended up. Musk is out of government, and this is the receipts here. Back in March, just remember, Musk made the wild claim that DOGE was on track to save the U.S. federal government a whopping $1 trillion by the month of May without providing any actual evidence to back up the big headline-grabbing soundbite. Well, May Mike has come and gone, and so has Elon Musk, unfortunately, and we'll go on here. Now, take a look. In April, Musk was then forced to admit DOGE may only cut $150 billion in spending, 15% of his original pledge of $1 trillion. So already not doing too well there. I'm afraid to say it actually gets worse, believe it or not. And by the end, we'll see how much Doge actually saved here. In February, Doge claimed it had achieved 55 billion in annual spending reductions. However, its wall of receipts detailed only 16.5 billion in this total. Half of that figure came from a typo claiming that 8 billion in savings was terminating an $8 million contract. So they rounded up 8 million to 8 billion. That helped to inflate the total. There's so many examples of this, which are all cataloged in this article, which is a brilliant takedown of Doge. And the New York Times reported here about other such accounting errors, including claims of canceled contracts that had already been canceled during the previous administration and so forth. He claimed that they were saving 4 billion a day. So that would have been 260 billion by now. And there's nothing near that. So verified budget savings, et cetera, not much to report there. So a total collapse in that one. And the mass firing, now he cut a lot of staff, right? That was in the news. Now the rehiring of those public sector workers could cost up to 135 billion during the end of this, or before the end of this fiscal year in 2025. Also, the IRS, he's done massive cuts there. This is ultimately going to result in less revenue collected by the Internal Revenue Service. Now, a lot of people are probably happy about that, certain people. But in terms of getting the government its bottom line, it's a disaster. So the whole thing with Doge, it's going to end up costing and increasing the federal budget. And here we're looking at the actual results. By the way, Doge is subject to 30 lawsuits out of the 200 related to the Trump administration's sort of agenda, if you will, for cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, and so forth. So that's all going to get tied up into the courts afterwards. So here's is mea culpa from Elon Musk. Watch this in this interview just yesterday.
So, I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along. I mean, everything he's done on Doge gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both. My personal opinion.
So he doesn't seem to be in any way embarrassed or ashamed by the fact that it's been a massive failure.
It's a giant. This Doge was a giant psyop. As I said from the beginning, I predicted that the budget for this year, the first year of the Trump administration, will exceed Biden's last year, and they're on track to do that and really surpass it by leaps and bounds with the new inflatable defense budget over $1 trillion. So that's the main thing that we need to pay attention to. So go to all the details are here. Up at this article at 21stcenturywire.com, and the receipts are there, all the links. So it's a well-researched piece, and it's really incredible. Absolutely no benefit from Doge at all. In fact, it's costing the government massive amounts of money.
Mark, did you have some thoughts about this?
Not much. I thought I read, and this may not be a very pivotal thing, but I thought I read where the Doge mission was given a timeline, and that he reached the time limit at any rate, to say nothing of the spending matters. I don't have time to get into that. Is that true? There was sort of a deadline beyond which Doge wouldn't exist?
Yeah, 2 years, I think. It's a non-governmental commission, effectively. It's not a government department, and its remit is, I think, 2 years, so 24 months.
I thought it was less than that. But at any rate, maybe we'll talk about that more later.
Yeah, 2 years, and they have to issue a report at the end of that 2 years as well, much like the Grace Commission did during the Reagan administration.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well, look,
J. Peter
Mark,
Grace, right?
Yeah, Mark. Let's come back onto RFK Jr. because it wasn't just the jabs that he was talking about. He was also talking about food additives.
Yeah, this is important, and this is an ongoing problem. Glyphosate coming out of Monsanto's products, which hasn't been mentioned yet, but RFK, to his credit, is doing some other good things. This is an extension of what I reported about earlier today. RFK Jr. pushes to close a food additive loophole, but is a gutted FDA up to the task? This is Foodprint, a health research organization. I tend to rely on those more than regular media for these sorts of things, especially. And there's a interesting statistic that comes from Foodprint. 98% of additives in our foods, especially in the United States, were introduced through what's called the GRAS pathway between 2000 and 2022. Secretary RFK Jr. has directed the FDA, Foodprint is saying, to explore rulemaking with an eye toward eliminating the generally recognized as safe pathway, that's GRAS, that allows food companies to self-regulate and affirm the safety of their products, including chemical additives, many of them harmful, without notifying the FDA. So under this GRAS, companies can introduce new food ingredients without a FDA pre-market review. It includes things like red dye number 3, sodium benzoate, titanium dioxide, canola, corn, and soybean oils, which are all GMO, BPAs in food packaging, which is a liner used in cans to prevent canned foods from spoiling, and BHA, another preservative. But it's interesting that the FDA, out of one side of its mouth, has eyed BHA since 1978, knowing that it causes some harm. But since 78, they're still allowing that additive in our foods. And so that's one of the things that's kind of odd here, guys, is that the FDA has long known that a lot of these things were problems, and nothing was ever done about it. Hopefully, RFK Jr. is serious and he'll pull the trigger and get some of these dangerous additives out of our foods. But again, no mention of glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, which permeates everywhere in our grains, you name it. If we see that, that would mean it's becoming a much more positive step forward. You're showing a graphic here. I don't know if you want to show it here. This is just a comic I picked up on. One superhero says, "Trust the science," and the indignant other superhero answers, "Questioning science is how you do science," and slaps the other one across the face. Kind of humorous. But that's the latest on that. RFK seems to be making some positive efforts, but it all bears very careful watching at the same time.
Thank you for that, Mark. Thank you. Now, back in the UK here, then, we have had no rain in the last period of time, and that, of course, is having an impact on the crops that are growing this year. And we're absolutely looking at a reduced harvest this year. But in the meantime, the Environment Agency has declared a drought for the northwest of England following the driest start to spring in 69 years. So they're saying that river flows have been declining along with groundwater levels due to the dry March, April and May. And they're saying that reservoir storage levels in the region are also receding and are currently lower than they were at this time during the 1984, 1995 and 2022 drought years. They're saying that the rain that has been in the last couple of weeks is not enough to reverse this dry start to the year. And they're expecting hotter weather in the coming weeks to make the situation even worse. Now, in parallel with that announcement, the Starmer regime has announced that the Environment Secretary, Steve Reed, has seized control of the planning process to build 2 major reservoirs for the first time since the 1990s. These 2 projects, one in East Anglia and the other in Lincolnshire, have been awarded the status of nationally significant, and that means that the project is so crucial to that the planning process is escalated from a local level to the Secretary of State, and he gets to make that decision. And so it's interesting, in their press release, they're talking about rapid population growth, crumbling infrastructure that's been left to decline, and a warming climate mean that the UK could run the risk of clean drinking water running out by the middle of the next decade without a major infrastructure overhaul. And I'm going to say that we should note that all of those issues are regime-created issues. They're regime-created crises. And if you'll understand what I mean by climate change being a regime-created crisis, because it's imagined. But anyway, that's another discussion. The question is now the time to be building massive data centers for AI projects with massive cooling water requirements? And since the government's AI projects are seen as national security issues, who's going to get the priority? Is it going to be the AI or is it going to be the human population? I think I know the answer to that. But look, Mark, let's end with you. And the World Health Assembly has now concluded. How did that go in the end?
Well, actually, it didn't go as well as the Eurocrats and the WHO-ocrats wanted it to, despite their headlines. This headline is from the conclusion from the WHO itself. The 78th World Health Assembly concludes, historic outcomes, consequential highlights, they're saying. It's a lot of highfalutin language, guys. It's a lot of bromides and bragging in a way. They're saying in their press release, I'm just citing some of it so we get their own words for it. The 78th World Health Assembly, the WHO, the highest decision-making body in the UN system in terms of health, convened from 19 May through the 27th, so it just ended, under the theme, One World for Health. It would have been more accurate had they said One Health for the World, the One Health system we've talked about. Member states, they say, considered approximately 75 items and sub-items at this health assembly across health, engaging lively debate, adopting consequential resolutions to improve health for all. See, it's a lot of beaming but largely empty language. And here's what our friend Tedros, the WHO Director General, had to say. The words historic and landmark are overused, but they are perfectly apt to describe this year's WHA. The adoption of the pandemic agreement and the approval of the next increase in assessed contributions, along with the numerous other resolutions that member states adopted, are a sign to the world that we can achieve cooperation in the face of conflict and unity amid division. But what they're not really saying, and that's because it's not true, is that they really didn't finalize the agreement, as James Roguski is pointing out repeatedly, and he was just interviewed again on Unredacted News. He's pointed out repeatedly that there is an annex within the treaty text that requires that they wait about 1 year to actually sign this thing. So it's going to get to WHA number 79 or very close to it before they can actually officially sign it. So the good news is all sorts of petitioning and other activities can take place. And I'm very inclined to submit to UK Column very soon an article that assesses the whole situation. That's what I'm starting to work on a little bit, and gives people what actions they can take. Some urgency, yes, but we've got about a year to work with, as I understand it. And there is, as a reminder, also a petition, and that is posted by James Roguski to repeal the PrEP Act. And that will be in the show notes. People can text him at any time. He doesn't mind it. 310-619-3055. And he can direct you on signing the petition to repeal the PrEP Act, which is a law that protects Big Pharma from liability for their products. And you don't have to be an American to do it. He can instruct you on how to do it no matter where you live. There's also a July 19 deadline for when the international health regulations will be finalized. That deadline is a little more imminent, but that's noteworthy as well. So a lot of good news in that there's a lot of big beaming language, but not as much substance as the WHO would like you to believe. So some good news there.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Mark. And as you say, the details of how to sign that petition will be in the show notes on the UK Column website. So do have a look at that. Thank you, Mark. We're going to have to leave it there for today. I'm going to say thank you to you and to Patrick for your contributions. And thank you to everybody that's been watching today. Join us in a few minutes if you're a UK Column member for UK Column News Extra. Just stay on the live stream. If you're not a UK Column member, we do need your support. Your financial support is much appreciated. And if you can't join as a member, then you can join us for extra as well. But we will leave it there for today. Thanks very much to everybody that joined, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.